Hello, friends. Today we're going to do the tales of the Nakshatra gods, and we're going to talk about Indra's fire, and that's going to be relevant to the Nakshatra Vishaka. So let's get going. Hello, Uma. Hey, Elias. Sonia, you came to this one too. All right. Now, let's read a little bit about Indra's fire. So here, I'm going to be reading from my new book. Oopsie daisy, just a second. I'm going to be reading from my new book, which is the Nakshatra, the Authentic Heart of Vedic Astrology, which you can get on Amazon.com. So I'm going to be reading from the later section of it and then talking about it. So this section is called The Power of Decisions, and it has to do with Vishaka and Indra. So you remember the story so far. Once upon a time, there was a great king of heaven called Varuna. But then there was also somebody called Parjanya, the rain god, who took advantage of an incident with the dragon Vritra. The dragon Vritra kidnapped the waters, and the rain god liberated the waters. And then took advantage of that to say, I guess I'm the better leader than Varuna, our king. And then he wound up taking over. But when he took over, he doesn't have the qualities and the power that Varuna has. So a lot of other gods have to help him. Remember that? And remember Vishnu primarily, the biggest thing that Indra lacked was the ability to see everything everywhere. So Vishnu gave him that, lent that power to somebody who would assist Indra, to Yama. Right? So Vishnu lent aid to Indra by empowering Yama to take over the judicial branch of the universal government. See, before, Varuna used to handle the judicial, the executive, and the legislative, all that stuff. And one person, Varuna, handled it all. After Indra took over, they split the judicial and the executive. So they put the judicial branch into the hands of Yama. So that teaches you about Bharani Nakshatra. Bharani Nakshatra has the feeling of a judicial branch of government. So it's going to be serious Nakshatra. It's going to be caring about rules and things like that. Hi, Lori. Brahma and Agni. So Vishnu gave some assistance to Indra. Okay, you took over, but you can't really handle it, so let me help you with this. I'll give Yama the power to take care of all of the judicial stuff that Varuna used to do. Now Brahma and Agni also help Indra. Brahma and Agni also gave Indra an important gift to help the rain god rise to the task of being the leader of the gods. This gift was the king of fire, Indragni. So Agni is the god of fire. Agni has a special fire called the king of fire, Indragni. There's all kinds of fire. Agni has a special one called Indragni, the king of fire, the fire chief. And it's in that fire is in the possession of Brahma. So Brahma and Agni both agree to give some aid to Indra by giving him this king of fire, Indragni. Indragni personified. There is a deity of this fire, is a special Agni. Indragni personified resides permanently at the right hand of Brahma. So when you know what Indragni is, which I'll explain in a bit, you'll know why it's always sitting at Brahma's right side. But Brahma gifted or allowed some portion of Indragni to go to Indra. Okay? So now what is this Indragni or king of fire? the best of all forms of fire. The best, Indra means best. Agni means fire. So the best fire, the king of fire, is the flame of consciousness. That's the best fire. What does fire do? Fire lights stuff up. And fire digests things. So the highest form of fire is perception. Perception is what happens when things are lit up. And comprehension, which is what happens by digesting a perception. So this is what this Indragni is all about. That's why it's always with Brahma. Because Brahma is the most intelligent God. Brahma is the one who designs everything. Every structure, every molecule, every atom is given its design from its basic fundamental form as just the 5 basic elements. Everything specific is enabled to become that specific thing by a template of design that Brahma created. So Brahma is extremely intelligent. It's symbolized by saying that the fire of intelligence, the Indragni, the fire of comprehension and perception, is always at his side. So if he gives a little bit of this to Indra, then Indra will get the clarity and confidence necessary to be a king or a leader, because a king or a leader has to constantly make clear decisions. It's an important thing if you want to know about being a leader. The ability to be a leader basically means that you have to have a lot of confidence and decisiveness. If you can make confident decisions, people will follow you. You may not make great decisions, but it doesn't matter, people will follow you. Just because everybody needs somebody to make decisions for them because they're not confident and they're not decisive. If you can make good decisions, then you'll be a good leader. And if you can't, and if you make lousy decisions, you'll be a bad leader. But to be a leader simply means to make a confident decision. So how do you make a confident decision? By having a lot of Indragni. Indragni means fire. Fire will clarify what you can see. Fire is going to bring light. Light clarifies what you can see. How much can you see right now? Especially if I turn this off. How's this? Can you perceive me right now besides the voice? But if I turn on the electric fire, you can perceive a whole lot. Right, so fire enables vision. Vision is perception. So the more you have fire in your mind, in your intelligence, in your senses, the more clearly you perceive things. The more clearly you perceive things, the more decisive you can be. This is why just the raw element of fire in astrology is associated with leadership. Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. It's associated with leadership. Mars, Sun, fire planets. Leadership. So Indra needed this. He gets it. What's always at Indra's side is Indrani, his consort. So you can make a case. It's kind of a stretch of a case, but it's kind of a fun case to make, that Indrani is the personified form of Indragni. That's with Indra. The Indragni that Indra has is Indrani, his consort. Okay, so this is one meaning of Indragni. It's the fire which is in our minds, which clarifies perception and allows the digestion of what we perceive. Any questions about that so far? Venkat wants to know how these stories got connected to the constellations. The gods dwell in Swarga, right? Swarga is the place where the gods dwell. Swarga is space. Swarga is deep space. Bhuva is middle space, and Bu is earth, local space. So the gods dwell in Swarga. So naturally, their stories are going to be associated with different areas of space. Then when you look at the stars and you see this pattern of stars looks like this, that's why it attracted this god to be there. This god went and dwelt there because they like that particular thing that this constellation looks like. And then the stories of that god and the nature of that god infuses that area of the sky. Okay? All right. Cool. All right, so there's several meanings of Indragni. So far I've explained the first one, which is the intellectual fire. There's another meaning. Indragni can also refer to the best form of conventional fire. So definitely Indragni means best fire. Now, there's all kinds of different fires. There's 4 basic types of fire. There's a conventional fire, there's sky fire, conventional fire, sky fire, stomach fire, and mind fire. Those are the 4 types of fire. Okay? So the best of those 4, in increasing order of amazingness, it goes from regular fire, sky fire, which is lightning, stomach fire, which is acid, metabolic acid, and then mind fire, which is all the electrochemical impulses in your brain. The electrochemical impulses are the Indra of the Agni, the best, the most amazing type of Agni. But amongst any type, there could also be the best of that type. So Indragni could also refer to the best form of conventional fire, which is the sacrificial flame. So the sacrificial fire, the ceremonial fire, used to convey offerings to the gods in returns for their blessings and protection. So let's talk about what the 2 of these things have to do with the Nakshatra Vishaka. Because over here on Facebook, Dimple asked, doesn't the fork symbolized by Vishaka suggest a split? So let's just say something about the name Vishaka. Shaka means a branch. V means it's a branch, but it's not a branch. V means it is, but it is a member of this group, but it's so noteworthy that it's actually not exactly a member of this group. Okay, so Vishaka is something that doesn't branch. It's a branch which will not branch. So actually, Vishaka means to join. And if you have a fork as a symbol for Vishaka, it's actually the part where the fork joins, which is the Vishaka, not the two separate forks. The Vishaka is the part where the forks join, where the teeth of the fork join, is the Vishaka. And when you study the sutra for Vishaka, you can see I did a video on it. Where it's in the first half of the book. The sutra on Vishaka is all about how things join, the joining of seeds. Coupling is the nature of Vishaka, to couple things together. So, but what the Indragni thing tells you about joining is the fork thing. Here you got 2 decisions, 2 possibilities, right? But when you decide on them, you only have one. Or when you decide on which one to take. So, like in programming or logic, fork is very important. Right? So, a fork in logic is where you have to make a decision point. And so this is what Indragni or intellectual fire is all about. The ability to make decisions. So Vishaka Nakshatra is a place where people are not going to be wishy-washy. People are going to be clear. this is what I like. This is what I want. Maybe they'll switch to something else later, but when they switch to something else, it'll also be with that fullness. Okay, no, I don't want that anymore. Now I want this. So the fork symbolism of Vishaka, you should see it as there's 2 or 3 or 4 different teeth on the fork, but they all come up to this one point, and the person chooses one of them and goes with it. So Vishaka is a nakshatra that's very decisive, just like Indra needs to be clear and decisive to be the king of the gods. So he needs that Agni, the clarity from the fire, to be the king of the gods. Same way Vishaka is very, very clear. So it's a little bit cut and dry also. Cut and dry meaning like it doesn't have too much nuance to it. It doesn't have too much iffiness to it. It's very clear and only this. It has to be one thing or the other. And then if you think about the fact that Indra also refers to ceremonial fire or sacrificial fire, it also tells you about Vishaka. Because when you do a ritual, nobody does rituals anymore, so you don't know what they're for, but mostly when you do a ritual these days, it would just be so that you feel like a witch or a cool hippie. But actually, if you were living in a culture with a ritual, like for example, a ritual might be to brush your teeth every day. So why do you do that ritual? Because you have an objective, that you want white teeth that don't fall out of your head. So every ritual is always done with an objective in mind. And it's the same thing with Vedic culture with the elaborate ceremonies and rituals. They don't just do them because it's fun to do them. They don't do them because, wow, cool, we get to put on these weird clothes and act really weird. They do them because by doing this, I get something. And so that's also the nature. Since Indragni also means sacrificial fire, you can understand that Vishaka also has that nature. I'm going to do this because it gives me that. And if this stops giving me that, I'm done doing this. I want to get that, and this gives me that, so I'm going to do this. But if something else gives me that, I'm going to switch over to that. You get it? So Vishaka Nakshatra is very goal-oriented. That's why somebody brought up the point that the symbol for it was a fork. But also the symbol for Vishaka is an archway, like a threshold, a finish line, a point that you're trying to get into, like a target, a point where some place where you're trying to go. So the symbol of nakshatra is of this nakshatra is a finish line. Because it's very goal-oriented nakshatra. And then there's another third way to read Indragni. It's as Indra's fire. Indra's fire, Indragni. And what is Indra's fire? This is the sky fire, right? The lightning. Indra, that was what Indra used to defeat the dragon. So this is another symbol for Vishaka Nakshatra is lightning bolts. That's why I have a picture on the screen on the YouTube stream. The lightning is Indra's fire. Okay? Boom. Now also, there's another thing about Indragni is it also means, remember I said Vishaka Nakshatra is all about coupling things together. It's not really about the splitting of the fork. It's about the joining of the fork. And Indragni is the coupling of Indra and Agni also. So Indra is rain and Agni is sun. This is very important to the sutra about Vishaka, is it uses the word in this way. the joining in Vishaka, what two things join? Rain and sun. And when rain and sun join, it allows seeds to grow. Excuse me. So Vishaka is a very harvest-oriented nakshatra, and it's a very coupling-oriented nakshatra. So this nakshatra is into sex also, because it likes to join things. It's a sexual nakshatra, but it's not really a lovey-dovey nakshatra, because it's very goal-oriented. So, whereas love actually doesn't have a goal. Love itself is the goal. But Vishaka will have a goal, and then one of the goals might be pleasure, and it'd be very into coupling, sexual coupling. But it's not really like a relationship positive nakshatra so much as it's a sex positive nakshatra. Okay. So here, at this point, you can ask me any questions you want to ask about Vishaka and Indragni. And we'll see if I can answer them. Here we got a couple already. If Vishaka doesn't function well, what happens? So I have to remind myself of this sutra. Vishaka Sutra, let's see. If Vishaka doesn't function well, if any nakshatra doesn't function well, then the parastat will be exaggerated. The thing that it needs will be exaggerated. So let me just go back and remind myself what the parastat is. I gotta scroll up a lot. Here we go. Getting closer. And here it is. Yugani parastat krishmana avastat. So if Vishaka doesn't function well, then it's going to have a need for yugani, which means the couple. So it's going to have an exaggerated need for partnership. So Vishaka should be able to function well, kind of solo. Although it always needs partnerships, but it shouldn't be dependent on them. So if Vishaka becomes weak, then it has an excessive need for partnership, feeling like it can't do anything on its own. So it will become obsessed with partnership, and that might come into sexual obsessions as well. If Vishaka doesn't function well. If Vishaka functions well, then it makes the joinings of things very fruitful. Yugani parastat krishmana avastat. The joining of the two things produces the result that it wants. But if Vishaka doesn't function well, it can't join two things together. It feels like, at least, it can't join the two things together to get what it wants. So it starts going out of its way to pull the joiner in. And that's how it becomes weak. So it's a question if Saturn would function well in Vishaka. It will function well in certain ways because Saturn is very logical. So in the sense of Vishaka having Indragni, and Indragni being the decisiveness, Saturn is a very decisive planet. It's a very clear, logical, decisive planet. So Saturn and Vishaka can give logic. Vishaka can be a vicious politician. There's certain nakshatras which are really good in politics. No surprise that it usually has to do with Indra. So Jyeshtha is very good with politics. This one, Vishaka, Magha, Aslesha, these kind of strong biting. What about Venus or the moon in Vishaka? Are they still decisive? No, see, these planets are not decisive by nature. So the Venus or the moon in Vishaka is much more likely to give you the result of feeling the need for somebody to help you make the decision, feeling the need for the partner to join you. It's much better to have a clear-cut planet in Vishaka, like Mars, Sun, probably Saturn in some ways. Similarity and difference between Vishaka and Critika. This is an interesting question because Agni is in both. So the similarity of Vishaka and Critika is neither one is lovey-dovey or fluffy, right? Neither one is lovey-dovey and fluffy. Both of them are sharp, clear. The difference is that Critika isn't so much into coupling. Critika is more about breaking and splitting. Whereas Vishaka is more about joining. That's the difference between the two. Here's a question over here on Instagram. Is there a certain age that Vishaka matures and becomes successful? I heard that Vishaka has a rough first half of life. So, it's basically, when you have a nakshatra that isn't so easy, then usually it means it takes you a while to figure it out. So you get so if you have Vishaka that's not really functioning well, then somebody can say it'll function better later in your life because it gives you time to figure out how to deal with it. So since Vishaka is a little bit extreme. Right? And Vishaka is a little bit extreme. And so it takes a while for a person to figure out how to work with that in the right way. Let's see what else we got. I'll talk about Swati later. Somebody asked, is Vishaka an individualistic nakshatra? No, it wants to join together, but this is why Vishaka is a difficult nakshatra. It wants to join together, but it wants to join together for its own result. So Vishaka has an this is why Vishaka is an easy nakshatra to find in problematic relationships. Vishaka wants to join, but wants the joining to serve its own interest. And that's difficult. So it's individualistic in a sense because it's got its own agenda, but it's group oriented in a sense because it wants to join with resources and people to get that, to fulfill that agenda. So it's hard to say if this is more masculine or feminine, which was Seth's question. Vishaka, it seems like it's both. Let's see what else. Yeah, any other questions? How do you take into consideration the ascendant degree of less? So look, I mean, obviously I'm not teaching you how to do astrology right now. I'm teaching you what Vishaka is all about. So, hi Valeria. So, and Prisa. So, oh yeah, this is your question, Prisa. So yeah, I'm not going to go through all the details of how you read a chart, but I'm just talking about Vishaka and I'm just suggesting these are the basic ideas about certain planets in Vishaka or not. This is an interesting question. To be able to cook, do you need Vishaka? And this is an interesting question from Uma. Okay, Venkat wants to know, you need Vishaka if you're able to cook? Well, that's very interesting because Vishaka has Agni. I was just talking the other day to my friend, you may know Rita Diamond. We were talking about how Critika is very, very, very important for successful cooks. Critika, but I could see why Vishaka might come into play because you need Agni. Well, you need Agni. But Critika is really great because it's really good at cutting things. Vishaka is really good at putting things together. Cooking, you'll need fire. And you'll need a little bit of creativity and Venus in there too. You need a combination of things to be able to be a good cook. But Critika, for sure. Critika itself has a lot of the combination of what you need, which is cutting and cooking. Okay. Now the question over here on Instagram was, does Vishaka relate to the Gopi Vishaka? Well, actually, it seems more like the Gopi Lalita. Ironically. But Gopis are the goddesses associated with Krishna. And most of them are named after nakshatras like Chitra, Radha, Vishaka. I would say that if you know about the lore of these goddesses, the Nakshatra Vishaka, ironically, is not a lot like the Gopi Vishaka. Except in the sense that the Gopi Vishaka is expert in coupling. But the nature of Vishaka as being more goal-oriented and hard is more like Lalita. And Anuradha would be more like Vishaka. That's what I would say on that question. On the Libra side, is Vishaka an artistic nakshatra? I don't know why would you introduce Libra? Because it's in that sign? So remember that according to my view, the signs are in local space and the stars are in deep space. And the two things are not glued together. Deep space and local space are not glued together. They shift their relationship to each other. So don't try to take your understanding of a nakshatra based on what sign it's in. That's what people did when they didn't have a lot of knowledge of who the gods were, and when they didn't have good translations, comprehensible translations of the Nakshatra Sutra. So at some points in time, certain nakshatras fall into certain signs, and then they go out of those signs. And the nuances of how those nakshatras themes clash or support the themes of the rashis that they overlap with, the signs that they overlap with, tell you about that period of history. But I wouldn't say, well, Vishaka is in Libra, so it must be X. It would just be that a planet that, if Vishaka is in Libra, then the planet that's in Vishaka will also be in Libra, so you also need to consider that you'll have to be interpreting this planet in Libra. Okay? Oh, this is an interesting question. Good, we got two or three interesting questions. Seth also, I did say this, but I'll just say yes again. Is Vishaka a little bit selfish, like coupling for self-gain? Right. That's what I was saying. Trusha says, isn't this a paired nakshatra with Anuradha? It's used to be called Radha instead of Vishaka. And then Anuradha was the second in the pair. And the contrast between Vishaka and Anuradha is a very great thing to explore if you want to understand selfish love versus unselfish love. Thank you, Brianna. Vishaka is a very goal-oriented or Machiavellian kind of joining up with things. Now, for people that have Vishaka, you don't have to go hide your head in the sand. right? Like Maisi Lee. You don't go hiding your head in the sand because Vic is saying, well, that you're like selfish love. You got to embrace that and figure out what's good with it. So what Vishaka produces is Krishamana, which means a great harvest. So it means that a person with Vishaka has the ability to know what it needs, get what it needs, and then produce something great from it. You see? So yeah, like here's a good example. Venkat says, do they make good managers? They're really good at putting teams together, especially people resources. They know how to join things together to get the product that they need. So that's not an evil thing. But if you're experiencing problems in your romance and your relationships, and you have a prominent Vishaka, then here's a clue on how to solve it. The clue is stop treating these people like resources to achieve your goals. Right? And start instead considering how the Vishaka Nakshatra pairs with the Anuradha Nakshatra. The Anuradha Nakshatra, all it wants to do is arouse and stimulate to bring things to a climax. It doesn't have another goal. And that's the perfect way to approach love and relationships. You're involved in this love and relationship because this love and relationship is great. You like it. Not because it gives something else besides the relationship itself. So that's the difference between Vishaka and Anuradha and their approach to relationships and love. And believe me, it's not that Anuradha doesn't have problems in relationships. Anuradha has plenty of problems with relationships because it keeps giving itself so completely into relationships without really carefully examining the relationship to see if it's actually going to be productive. So you need both, Vishaka and Anuradha, practically speaking, in this world. Okay, so this is also interesting. How is Vishaka and Anuradha pair different from the Palguni? They both seem relationship-oriented. There's tons of nakshatras that are relationship-oriented because relationships are so important. So, I mean, you could just go through tons of them have to do with sex or relationships or both. But Palgunis, they're quite the same. How is Vishaka and Anuradha pair different from the Palguni? Well, the Palguni pair is really male-female. And again, you could even say it's male-female with Vishaka and Anuradha because in the nakshatra pairs, the male is the first nakshatra and the female is the second. So with Palgunis, the first Palguni really shows you feminine, the female's role in the male-female partnership. The first one actually shows you the male's role in the male-female partnership. The second one, the female's role. With Anuradha and Vishaka, you'll see the male approach, the masculine approach to sex versus the feminine approach to sex. So whereas Anuradha is the feminine approach to sex and Vishaka is the masculine approach. Give me a goal. Get it done, then it's done. That's the masculine approach. I got a goal. Did you get it? Feminine approach is like much more like this thing in and of itself is good. We don't have to rush to the goal. We don't have to get to the goal. In fact, sometimes I don't even get to the goal, but it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy this thing. Yeah, that's another thing which is ruining female sexuality is so much emphasis on orgasm. So much emphasis on a goal. This is very Vishaka and very male sexuality oriented. Actually, the actual process itself is more enjoyable than the goal. So if you're deep in Anuradha and you get that, you can have more enjoyment than somebody that just measures their sex life in terms of orgasms. Okay, so that's another important thing to take away from the pairing, the contrast of the pairing of Vishaka and Anuradha in terms of how it relates to sexuality. So now Venkat has another question. How did they create these mythologies and stories and connect it to the constellations? Well, they're geniuses. over thousands of years. And the traditional answer to your question is that Brahma explained these concepts to his offspring, and they illustrated these concepts by different events that were happening, and then these stories get passed down into human culture. That's the traditional. And then why are they connected to the constellations? Because the stories which are connected to a god are connected to the constellation where the god lives. And why does the god live in that particular constellation? Because the way that constellation looks has something to do with that god. Arc. So he's asking, or she's asking, do you mean that nakshatras are a completely separate concept than the signs? Yes. So if you want to find out more about that, please go to victicara.com/tropical, and you'll find tons of information about that. What else we got? Got 10 more minutes, so. Question: will the planet in a particular nakshatra acquire flavors of that nakshatra and function with that the whole life? Yes. That's the basic thing. That's the basic theory of any kind of astrology. A planet in a sign or a nakshatra or a house deals with that house, acquires the issues, works within that house or nakshatra or a sign. Where are we? Does soma relate to this nakshatra? Soma is in the intoxicant drink. Not particularly, not directly, but any place where Indra is, you get soma. Would Vishaka people have problems with drugs or alcohol? Possibly. Yes, but not because of the soma thing primarily, or the soma thing might help you grasp it. But the reason is that Vishaka people are very addictive. They're very, very cut and dry. They're very, very clear. They go for it. They put they got a couple of options. They decide on one of them and then they go with it. And they put everything that they got into that. They want a harvest. They want a particular goal. So they're very, very intense. And so the intensity is part of the reason why they have addictive natures. And also the fact that they need yugani to join with something so they feel like, I need something from someplace else. So this is the thing. You'll never become addicted to alcohol. You won't even need alcohol, drugs, etc., if you realize that you already have the ability to create the same effect that this substance creates. You already have it. You can change your own feelings. You don't need to rely on something else to change your feelings. But Vishaka's basic nature is the sun, Agni, is not complete without Indra, the rain. The rain, Indra, is not complete without Agni, the sun. So the two of them need each other. So it disposes a person to feel like they don't have what they need already. And they'll be looking for that in external things. When you look for stuff in external things, you become addicted to it, whether it's a drug or a person or a video game or just like a way of combing your hair, whatever it is. You become addicted to the thing because you feel you have to do it that way. You need it that way. So Levi is saying, wasn't Soma portrayed in almost a positive way with Indra? Yeah, Soma's positive thing. So that's why I'm saying it's not really the Soma connection to Indra that is the reason why Vishaka is an addictive nature. But, and also don't be like, shit, Vic says that Vishaka is an addictive nature. Addictive nature is great. You need to become addicted to something to be able to get into it and enjoy it. But you just have to be careful. If you have a Vishaka Nakshatra, you can become unhealthfully addicted to things or addicted to unnecessary things. But see, the same thing, if Vishaka is addictive, then that means that you have an asset. You can really dig into something. You can really get into something and go for it. That's a Vishaka, a good quality of the same thing. So you're right. Soma is a health food. It's not exactly a drug. It's a health food. And it's like the super health food that makes you super powerful and makes you feel great at the same time. So yeah, a little bit of their Soma is some remotely connected to Vishaka, but it's much more direct to just understand that the basic nature of Vishaka is to feel like very intense and to feel like it needs stuff. What else we got? Vishaka, good and sharp action reaction, but slow in learning new things? Good question. Yeah, they may not want to learn new things. They would only want to learn the things that are related to the thing that they're interested in. Hey, Yuyi. Would I consider Vishaka to behave like Jeshta plus Kritika, like Indra and Agni? No, why bother doing that? Like, the only reason why I would do that is if I didn't have any information about how Vishaka behaves. But I have information about how Vishaka behaves. Yugani Parastat Krishamana Avastat. That it wants to join things together to get a result from it. Now, is that also basically the way that Jeshta and Kritika work? Yeah, sure. It's quite an interesting observation, actually. What Critika wants to do is it wants to get energy out of things. Take out the essence of something, use the essence. And what Jeshta wants to do, what does Jeshta want to do? Oh yeah, attacks and counterattacks. So Jeshta wants to get opportunities. So that part is not really so present in Vishaka. Vishaka is more like a modification on Kritika than a combination of Jeshta and Kritika. Levi wants to know, why does Jupiter rule this nakshatra? Levi, you should know that Jupiter doesn't rule this nakshatra. Jupiter is the Vimshotari Dasha planet for this nakshatra. Thank you, Kamin. Planets don't rule nakshatras. Gods rule nakshatras. Planets, the dasha systems associate planets to nakshatras for the dasha system, for figuring out which dasha is first, which one is second, which one is third, and how much time has expired in the first one. That's all. Otherwise, your question is really good. Why does Jupiter rule this nakshatra? What does this have to do with Jupiter? To the fixed stars, Algol and Regulus related all to this nakshatra. Regulus is Magha. Algol, I'm not sure what it is. So I'm not sure about that question. Interesting question. If Vishaka deals with sculpting, not on its own. Doesn't mean a person with a lot of Vishaka wouldn't be a sculptor, but it would probably come from some other thing in the chart. Trusha wants to know, what qualities of Indra are present in Vishaka differently from the way they're present in Jeshta? Here in Vishaka, Indra is really just the rain god. This is a nice question, actually. Thank you. Here in Vishaka, Indra is the rain god. In Jeshta, Indra is the king of the gods. Now, it so happens that the king of the gods became the rain god. I mean, the rain god became the king of the gods. But, so that's the difference. In Jyeshta, it's much more political. Jyeshta is extremely political. In Vishaka, it's more about the sun and moon, the sun and rain joining together. One thing needs the other. We got to join these two things together so we can get the harvest that we want. Okay. Yeah, these are good questions suddenly coming up at the end. I noticed that the Instagram feed, wow, it fluctuates the most with the number of viewers. All right, so another question was, why are Vishaka and Critika considered mixed quality? Because Agni is required for everything. Fire is required for everything. So any nakshatra associated with Agni is going to be impacting on anything. So for example, Critika, it's energy, release of energy. No matter what you want to do, you need release of energy. You need energy to be released. And Vishaka is to join things together and produce a harvest. So that's not specific to any particular kind of thing. It's relevant to everything. So the Agni nakshatras are always mixed because that nature of achieving goals or releasing energy is required for everything. And yeah, thank you. Venkat asks, is Vedic mythology the only true working mythology, not Greek, not Norse, only Vedic is true and working? Hardly. Not at all. It's just like you could ask the question of if Sanskrit is the only working language. No, Sanskrit isn't even spoken anymore. That's interesting, Mario. And Sanskrit isn't even spoken anymore, but it's the mother of all the languages, and all the languages are just permutations of it. Right? So similarly, all the mythologies around the world, pre-Christian, are permutations of the basic template of mythology that is in the Vedas. So Norse, Thor, all those you can just look. I mean, look at Zeus, Thor, Indra. The same. They're all the same. So it's not like that at all. It's just that Vedic mythology is best preserved, and it's probably the original form of the human mythology. So it's the most easiest to study. A lot of questions, but I have to leave. Pottery wheel is interesting. I love Venkat's. I'm following on Venkat's theme so much here. But we see proof for only Vedic mythology through constellations. What proof? And I don't know. Have you studied Norse sidereal Norse stellar astrology? Maybe you can find proof through their thing too. The point is, no, Fuzz. I doubt that you've studied Sanskrit. The point is that Vedic stuff is actually the best, but that doesn't mean that the other stuff doesn't have value, because it's actually like a different permutation of the Vedic stuff. Yeah, this is a good one, Trusha. Indra is a womanizer. Does this apply to Vishaka? It's similar, too much goal-oriented, just wanting the partner for what you want from the partner. Okay. Levi, last question over here. Levi, since Indra is the rain god, could this nakshatra help things grow? I mean, the statement is, the sutra is, in the joining of fire in the joining of fire and rain, or in the joining of sun and rain, we need seeds to produce the harvest. That's the sutra for Vishaka. So you can read the book, you can study that sutra in my book, and you can also watch the video that I did on that sutra. But that is the symbolism of Vishaka, is that it wants a particular harvest, so it plants a seed and joins the sun and moon together. Okay, guys. Thanks so much for your encouraging comments. I'm glad you like it. So we'll keep up with it. I'll see you at the beginning of next week to discuss what Dharma is. Okay. Farewell.